and welcome back to my channel. My name's Selena if you're new, and today I'm doing another video on grab and go lunches. So what grab and go lunches are basically just meal prepped lunches for the week. The recipes I'm using today are ones that my family have specifically asked me to make. So we are having, for dessert, or morning tea options, I guess, an chocolate orange cake. So I'm going to get that started straight away. I have got already in my bread machine a batch of white sandwich bread. And in my white sandwich bread, I did film, I was in my dressing gown, it was early, I was having coffee. I did film how I put that together, and it's really simple. I just put all my ingredients into my bread machine and turn it onto the dough setting. We're not making bread, we're making a pizza scroll because that's what the kids have requested for lunches. So I've got a batch of white bread going at the moment, and I will show you me putting that together now. All I'm doing is adding 300 mils of water, 15 grams of olive oil, and that's my bread dough ready now. You can hear it beeping. I also added 500 grams of white baker's flour, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1.5 teaspoons of yeast, and 1 teaspoon of bread improver. I've set that to the dough setting. It has just beeped as I was telling you about it now. So that is now ready for me to finish off. I got that started just to speed up the process of my video. And that's how I would do it if I wasn't filming as well, just to get all these meals done as quickly and efficiently as possible. So my bread dough is now done, waiting for me. I'm going to get this cake made and in the oven, and then we'll proceed. And this is a super easy cake. So what I've done is a loaf tin here, and I've just put some baking paper or parchment paper in there. For some reason, I don't know why, but I really like rectangles when it comes to lunch cakes. So I won't always do them, but sometimes I do. Now this cake is super easy. Everything is going straight into our mixing bowl. So in here, I have already put 125 grams of butter. I'm going to add to that straight away the zest of 1 orange, which equals about a teaspoon or 2. If I didn't have oranges in season or I wasn't able to get them, I would use some of that orange powder that I make out of the peels. And how I make orange powder out of peels is the same way as lemon powder and lime powder, is I peel my oranges, trying to leave as much of the white pith behind as possible, and I just pop them in my dehydrator until they are nice and crispy. Once they're crispy, I will process them either in the food processor or like a coffee grinder, and then they turn into a powder. So I'd use about a teaspoon of the powder if I didn't have fresh oranges ready to go. So we've got our butter, we've got our orange zest. I'm going to put my sugar in there. We've got 1 1/3 cups of white sugar. I have 3 eggs that I need to put in. And I always crack my eggs separately in case there's a blood spot or something, which I've gotten here, or a piece of shell or anything like that. It just makes getting them out, getting it out easier than if it's in the mix. So 3 eggs straight in. I have 1/2 cup of freshly squeezed orange juice, 1/4 cup of just water. We have 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. And then I have my cocoa and my self-raising flour in this bowl together. So I have 1 3/4 cups of self-raising flour, and I have 1/2 cup of cocoa. So again, like I said, could not be easier. Everything in the bowl. there is a nice creamy orange frosting that goes on top of this cake. I need my beater. I'm saying there's a nice creamy frosting that goes on top of this cake, and we'll make that a little later on. So you just want this on really low. Just get those ingredients to mix together. Try not to splash them out of your bowl. Oops, there we go. So mix that on a nice low speed till everything is incorporated well. I'll give it a bit of a scrape, and then we're going to turn the speed up to sort of a medium speed, and it'll take about 3 minutes. But before it gets too far along, I've got some flour on the edge. I'm just going to scoop that down. Get that going for about 3 minutes. Our cake is looking lovely, or our cake batter, I should say. That's been beating away, just doing its thing for like 3 minutes. And it looks really lovely. There you go. Okay, straight into our lined tray, lined loaf pan. All right, so the recipe calls for an hour bake time. I've got my oven set to about 160, 170. That's degrees Celsius Fahrenheit, degrees Celsius fan forced. Yeah, the recipe says do it for about an hour. I'm going to check this at about 45 minutes because I'm not sure, but I think my pan shape may cook it slightly quicker. So I'm going to set a timer for 45 minutes and then I'll check. But yeah, straight in. All right, so for my pizza scrolls, I've got my oven. I've got 2 ovens. So the second oven, it is set to 200 degrees Celsius, just doing a preheat. Yeah, when it comes to pizza scrolls, you put whatever you want on them as a filling. So what I've got is just my white bread dough, all done there. And sometimes I use pizza dough, like a pizza dough for the bread component, but I find if I use my white bread dough, it's a little bit fluffier, and I don't know, I think pizza scrolls do nice if they're fluffy. This is not the easiest thing to roll out because it's always going back together, but that's all right. We're just going to take our time, give it a dusting of flour. We want to make a nice big rectangle or rectangle-like shape. All right, I'm happy with that. That's rectangle enough for me. I've just got some tomato paste here and some mixed Italian herbs. And those Italian herbs include some sun-dried tomato, some onion flakes, basil, oregano. You could use whatever herbs you liked if you wanted to make this. But that there, tomato paste and a good sprinkling of Italian herbs makes a really easy pizza sauce because it stays nice and thick. It doesn't weep through into the bread or the dough. And I am going to just top this with what I know will get eaten. So I've got a little bit of mozzarella. I'm probably going to do 1 handful. And I'd say a handful is about a cup. I've got some tasty cheddar. I'll go in with a handful of that as well. And I'm just going to mix these and spread them around. All right, I've got a little bit of olives. I'm just going to put them on half like that. Some spring onion tops, or they're not even spring onions. These are my onion tops. I went out there the other day into the garden, and this is my favorite thing about growing onions is the fact that while you're waiting for that bulb to come out, you can harvest the green tops, and it's like you get bonus onions or something. I don't know. I really enjoy growing onions. even though they're not an expensive vegetable for the most of the year. So, but yeah, I really enjoy growing them. I seem to always plant out in seed trays so many more onions than I ever put in the ground. But anyway, I've got a little bit of ham, so just a few slices of shaved ham. And some salami. And I'm going to lay the salami sort of flat just to make the rolling a little simpler. But when you make pizza scrolls, you just do whatever suits you. I try not to put fillings other than the cheese and the sauce right to the very edge though, because sometimes I find they fall out just a little bit too much. Now I'm just going to roll this up. So I'm just going to pull up the lip and just tuck in your filling if it tries to fall out. Just like that. Now there's lots and lots of ways that you can cut a scroll. I've seen people use like dental floss, and I've done that before as well. I didn't find it the most successful, especially with a filled scroll, like a pizza topping one. So I'm just going to cut it with my knife. No one in my family cares if these aren't perfect looking. But yeah, just like that. I've got a lined couple of trays here. I'm going about 2 centimeters or about 1 inch thick in my cut as well, and just putting them open up like that. These will make a mess on the tray. I'm okay with that. All right, so just like that. These are really yummy hot or cold as well. So that's why I like having them available for lunches, and it's probably why the kids request them, is because if we aren't able to heat them up, they're still really delicious. Really good for picnics too. If you're looking for a handy picnic food, I recommend making these. So I'm going to pop these in my oven. I'll turn it down to about 180 degrees Celsius and anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes, 25 minutes. Keep an eye on them. The cook time will depend on how hot your oven is and also how thick your bread dough was, but mine's quite thin, so I'm thinking 15, but I'll keep an eye on it. All right, so the racks are not quite the right height in order for me to get my second tray in. So I probably should have cooked my cake in the top oven and my pizza scrolls in the bottom oven, because I know those, the rack configuration is a little bit different. Anyway, so I'm just gonna leave my second tray there, let that first tray cook, pull them out, pop those ones in. It's not a huge deal. They're not going to take that long. And what will happen is while these are sitting here, they're actually just going to puff up a little bit anyway. Like proving, if you wanted super fluffy like pizza scrolls, you could prove them for 15 to 20 minutes by just letting them sit in a warm space covered in a tea towel and then pop them in. I'm happy to just cook mine straight away. All right, everything's looking and smelling absolutely delicious. The next thing I'm gonna make that's really easy to grab and run out the door for lunch is, and by request, coleslaw. So the kids want coleslaw, so coleslaw it is. Now, you could absolutely use reusable glass containers or Tupperware. We don't use that. We have those things, but we keep them at home. When we're taking things out of the house, I find more often than not, they don't make their way back into the house. Yeah, so what I am using is these little takeaway containers, and I know some people will not be able to handle it because they couldn't when I did my freezer dinners and I did everything in portion controlled. There were people who just couldn't cope with the fact that I used this sort of container. So if this is something that you want to make at home, use the container that you're comfortable using, okay? These are, for those of you who were interested in what brand I bought, it is the value brand. They weren't that expensive. They are BPA free, freezer safe, microwave safe, reusable. We get multiple uses out of these. They're not a one-use thing in our house, but if they do break or they do not make it back home because they get left behind somewhere, there's no stress. They're not a big deal. But yeah, value brand from IGA. So I find they're a pretty sturdy takeaway container. So I've got a handful of those there. I'm going to make a big bowl of coleslaw here. Yeah, and I'm just using what I had in my fridge. So I had about a half a purple cabbage, and I had a quarter of a white cabbage. And I've been making coleslaw for what feels like forever. And you could use a grater, you could put it in a food processor. I am just going to cut it with my knife. And the recipe changes every time I make it, because when I make coleslaw, I use what I have on hand. I give that bit of a rub as I drop it in there, just to separate the strands. So today I'm going to use some more of those little onion tops because I've got them. And I went and picked some carrots this morning because my fridge was out. And I've found that maybe because of where I live, we don't need to do huge harvests most of the time. Now, last year I did do a harvest where I collected all my carrots, and I found that we actually didn't get through them all before they were starting to be a bit sad. So that required me to process them in some way, and which is fine. But for us, where we live, it is pretty good conditions for growing carrots all year round. So I've just got a constant supply of seed going into the ground. And then it takes about, 12 weeks, 3 months, 4 months for you to get some decent sized carrots. One thing I have learnt about growing carrot is they don't like manure. So I often will put them in a bed that still is pretty full with the dirt, but it hasn't got like a bunch of fresh manure in it. They seem to grow better that way. And also a bit of sand in my dirt helps. So there's a little something I've learnt along the way in growing carrots, and they're still not perfect, and I'm still no expert at growing carrot, but we don't buy carrots. I think we've bought one packet this year. And that was because I didn't sow enough between, like, consecutively. So we just didn't have enough. We ran out before the next lot were ready. So I'm mostly making this a purple coleslaw. With that, I'm going to add this whole half a cup of green onion tops. You could use fresh onion, you could use shallots, whatever works. There's a decent carrot for this morning's pickings. The other time that I will harvest all of my veggies at once is because I need the bed for something else. And I'm about to come up to that point with a couple of other things that are growing out there. And one thing, I got excited when it was starting to cool down slightly, so I planted all these radishes, and I also planted some turnips as a second planting, because the first planting they didn't come up, it was still too hot. Anyway, I've now got, as of yesterday when I was out in the garden having a little wander, I have like a handful of turnips all ready at once because I just sprinkled the seed. I did not do anything. I didn't think about what I was doing. I just tossed some seed and let's see what grows. Well, enough grew and it grew, it grew all at the same rate because I didn't think about it. So I've got all these turnips and I've got all these radishes, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do with them. So if you've got great ideas for radishes, and they are daikon radish, so they're the big long ones, or a great idea to use up turnips, hit me in the comments down below with some ideas. I've got a couple floating around, but yeah, I grew the daikon radish with the expectation of making like banh mi pickle, and I've already done that. I've made 3 big 1 litre jars of banh mi pickle. It's sitting in my fridge at the moment, developing flavour. I don't think we need more than 3 big jars. So I've got all these huge radishes, and maybe I could put some in this coleslaw actually. That might be an idea. One way to use some up. But yeah, and I've got turnips. So all ready at once. You could use like a spoon to mix this, but I always find there's nothing better than hands. And this is for my family, and they're used to me making their food, so they don't have a problem with my hands, and they are clean. I spend a lot of time cleaning my hands, which I don't show on videos, because how many times do you want to see someone wash their hands? So anyway, I might grab a radish. We're going to pop a radish in this, so come with me. Check these, they look good. All right, we'll only be a second, 1 sec. All right, come with me quickly, grab a radish. We're going to throw it in as well. That'll be nice in coleslaw. I was going to put rocket in it, but I think I'm going to keep the rocket for something else. I think these are the turnips. They're the turnips. Look at that beauty. Isn't it stunning? I've never grown this variety of cosmos before, and I'm so, so glad to see it's come out. There's the radish just there. So as you can see, heaps. Thank you. All right, so we're gonna give this a wash off, take it inside. We've got some amazing leeks coming along out here. There's our radish. I did give it a wash, but I'm gonna give it a peel as well. Found these radishes aren't quite as strong. They're not hot like the little red ones can be. So I don't think anyone will mind that it's in their coleslaw. So for my dressing, I do a rough guide, okay? So I'm just going to eyeball it, but you want about, for this much coleslaw, about a cup of mayonnaise. You can use freshly made mayonnaise. It doesn't have to be bought. This is one we got. About a teaspoon of Dijon mustard. I don't always add the mustard. Just checking our pizza scrolls are nearly done. A couple of tablespoons of vinegar. I've got apple cider vinegar today, and some white sugar. And so usually I find about the same for white sugar as vinegar. So a couple of good spoons of that. I might do 3. And a bit of salt, just a decent pinch. Give that a good mix. And I add herbs sometimes as well, chives, dill, parsley. The joy of making these things yourself is that you can add whatever you like to it. But that's a rough guide to coleslaw dressing. I'm going to grab my scrolls out and pop the other tray in. Okay, look at that. Okay, I'm going to set them there, pop these ones in. I forgot to put basil inside them. I picked some fresh basil. So what I might do is just chop some basil and sprinkle it on top in a minute. So I'm happy with that. Get that dressing nice and dispersed. All right, I feel like I've got even coverage going on. So I'm just going to fill as many of these as I can. If I have leftover, I'm going to put it in a large container and just pop it in the fridge, and we'll have that with dinner one night. In one of my recent pre-made lunch videos I did, someone asked, how long do these things last? I have a rule that nothing lives in my fridge for more than 4 days. So the day I make it is day 1. And then the 4th day, we can still eat it, but the 5th day, I just for safety reasons, will pass it on to chickens or the bin or something like that. As far as the salad went that I made last time, it was a Greek style salad. It was really good for 3 days. On the 4th day, it was like a little sad. It was still perfectly edible, but you wouldn't even want to eat it after 4 days because things like the cucumber was going a little bit soft. It wasn't particularly palatable looking, but it was still tasty. Yeah. So only one of those lasted to the 4th day. The rest were gone. So yeah, I usually when I do these grab and go lunch style dishes that are going to sit in my fridge and not be frozen, I aim for things lasting up to 4 days. Just so we don't get soggy underneath. And these will get just baggied up. And they smell so good. So does the cake sitting in the oven. All right, so I've got about 5 minutes left to go in the oven. The next thing I'm going to make, and the final thing other than the frosting to go on our cake, is some little yogurt cups. I haven't had any luck finding the right sized disposable yogurt container. I do know about the squeezy ones, but my family aren't a fan of those. So I am using little glass pots for my yogurt container. They were just from Temu. I'm going to add, so I'm using Greek yogurt that we made in our Instant Pot, and I will do another video very soon on how to make homemade Greek yogurt. But for now, I'm just going to sweeten this because this is what we use as a sour cream substitute. It is just Greek yogurt. We've got no flavour in it at all. I can, and I have made it sweet in the making process, but I prefer to just make it plain, and then when I want sweetened yogurt, I just take a quantity out, sweeten that, and I can leave what's left unsweetened. I'm going to be sweetening my yogurt with just a bit of honey and some vanilla essence. I want to make a bit of a strawberry compote, strawberry puree. The kids don't want chunky bits of fruit, they want smooth fruit. So in a saucepan, nothing, I'm going to add some frozen strawberries. I've got about a cup and a half of frozen strawberries. I want to add about 2 tablespoons of water, even though there's a bit of condensation on that. And I'm just going to let that bubble away on the stove until all the strawberry breaks down and it becomes quite smooth. I will blitz it as well. This yogurt is going to be similar to the yogurts that you find in the supermarket that have the ripple of fruit through it. So not fruit mixed through the yogurt. It's going to be like a parfait almost, layered with the fruit. So I'm just going to add a little bit of water, a couple of tablespoons in there. Pop that on my stove and just let those strawberries break down. So there's our strawberry. The cake is ready as well. Looking and smelling absolutely delicious. So I'm going to get all of these out of their tins, off their trays, onto cooling racks, let them start cooling down before we continue sweetening our Greek yogurt. My strawberries have cooked down enough that I'm happy with that. What I'm going to do is let them cool just a little bit before I blitz them with a stick blender. So I've got about 1.5 litres of Greek yogurt. These little tubs take about 100 mils. So we do need about 1 litre of yogurt to fill them. Okay, you can do whatever you want if you want to do this. I like to add a decent amount of vanilla. So I'm going to add 2 tablespoons, roughly 2 dessert spoons of vanilla, and then some honey. So again, as sweet as you want to go. Could also substitute maple syrup, and you can also substitute liquid sugar, so sugar syrup, or even just icing sugar works as well. So I'm going to do 2 heaped spoons of honey as well. All right, I'm ready to puree my strawberries down with a stick blender. Just like that. Go as smooth or as coarse as you like. I have strained this in the past by putting it through a sieve. I'm not going to do that today. There we go. These have got a little lid like this that just clip on top. Okay, so they're now ready for the fridge. Yeah, these ones don't travel so well in lunch boxes and things like that, but they do make a great morning tea for people who are at home, or even afternoon tea when they get back from wherever they've been. All right, I've popped my cake in the freezer just to get that to cool down a bit quicker so that we can get all of our lunches in the fridge and we are done for the week, ready to, you know, have lunch just like that on the go. So the icing is really simple. Again, you just need a mixer of some kind. It could be a hand mixer or a stand mixer. I've got 60 grams of butter going in. I have the rind of 1 orange, which is about a tablespoon, roughly. I am putting in 1.5 cups of icing sugar. I have sifted my icing sugar. And I've also got 2 tablespoons of milk, but I'm gonna add that just a little bit later on. And I've also got about a tablespoon of cocoa, but we're going to sort of marble the icing. So I'm going to just make the orange component first. Just turn it on, let it do its thing, get nice and creamy. We'll drizzle in our milk once the butter and the sugar are sort of combined, just to thin it down. I don't like to add all my milk straight away because sometimes you just don't quite need the full amount, and I'd rather not have sort of runny frosting, so, or icing, whatever you call it. So yeah, we're just going to let this beat together until we're nicely combined with the butter and the sugar. It smells incredible. It's amazing how much flavour comes out of the orange skin. It is so, so good. Okay, I'm going to keep the rest of this milk for when we add the cocoa so that it's the same consistency as our orange. And that's exactly how we want it. A nice spreadable consistency. Right, cake's out of the freezer. Now, I mean, icing this is super easy. We're just going to put blops of our icing randomly on the cake. And I was going to decorate this with some dried orange, the whole dried orange, but I've got none left, so I'm not sure what's happened to it all. I guess we used it. I will make some more. But yeah, that would be a nice way to decorate this cake. And yeah, I'm just going to swirl together. There we go. I might put a little orange on top. Since I don't have any orange slices, I'll just put a bit of zest on top. This week's grab and go lunches, we have the yogurt pots, the orange chocolate cake, some delicious coleslaw, and our pizza scrolls. So thank you for spending time with me and watching my video. I do hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. I've got lots of content still to come. And to all my new subscribers, a huge welcome to you. I hope you all have a fantastic week, and I will catch you next time. So here is our up close of all the yummy things we've made today to get us through this week.